Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morrison. As always, I'm here with your host, Nicholas E. Smith. Man, it's going to be a great show today. I had some technical difficulties just before I was coming on. My computer decided to automatically update just randomly.
Of
And I'm
course,
like
right?
over here nail biting. I'm like, come on. And then it went, and I hopped on like right before 9:30. I'm like, oh my gosh. So it's going to be a good show. I know it is. Nick, will you introduce our guest today?
Absolutely. We're lucky to have Kathrine Lee on with us. Kathrine Lee is a life coach. She's a business strategist, and she's a social justice advocate. She runs the Pure Hope Foundation, which is a ranch for children of sex slave trafficking. Is that right? I don't even know if I'm saying that correctly.
But, yeah, it's for those that have been rescued out of the atrocity of trafficking. Yes.
Perfect.
You got it.
Now, she's the creator of a faith-based personal development system called The Ultimate Source and founder of the nonprofit Pure Hope. She's also the author of Interrupted, The Joy and Mastery of a God-Directed Life, and has guided thousands of people to discover their unique design in their own lives. She served as a business strategist for the Daniel Plan, a global initiative founded by Rick Warren, Dr. Oz, Dr. Daniel Amen, and Dr. Mark Hyman. And you might recognize Kathrine from one of her appearances on the Oprah Winfrey Show. But she says the thing that she's most proud of is being a wife to her husband, Michael, and then the mother to three fabulous children, Corinne, Logan, and Hannah. Man, I stumbled through that pretty well. But Kathrine, welcome to the show.
Hey, and Nick, shout out to you that you got Corinne's name right. You already got points. Yeah, you are a giant. You are a giant in my eyes because you got right what was most important, which is my kids. Yeah, so great job. Perfect. And hey, Ryan Morris, I got to tell you, my executive director of Pure Hope Foundation is Ryan Morris. So I love seeing you on. And I love the fact that you knew because adversity came up, something big was going to happen. So I'm with you on that.
That's how it goes for us. Every time there's technical difficulties, it's one of the best shows that we've ever had. So we're excited to have you on. Ryan's going to control the comments. So you'll see comments pop up. You're welcome to respond or not respond. You can just let them flow through if you're in flow. I'll be typing down all the gold nuggets that you drop as quickly as I can. And then we'll have this available to you. If you're watching this, make sure you subscribe. If you haven't done that, follow the YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook on Wake Up with Giants TV and in the Tribe of Giants. So, Kathrine, you ready to dive into your story?
Can't wait.
Yeah. Can we go back in time with you and talk about what it was like for you growing up?
Yeah. So, reading your book, by the way, I cannot tell you how excited I am that this is available. My precious friend, Rachel Smart, sent it to me, who is a giant. And she was like, you two need to meet, right? So when there's nothing better than connecting giants to giants. And so I just want to first say that. And when I think about what you wrote in your book, I think about who I was growing up, and I was a small to refer to your book. I thought small, and if small could be paired with of course it is, with fearful, that was definitely the realm in which I grew up in, was just kind of a feeling of small and fearful, play it safe. In fact, my mother's giant dream was to write a children's book. So you've lived out her dream. And I keep telling her, we're doing this before you pass away. But she was told, small thinking, that, you don't make any money if you write a children's book, because this was 70 years ago, and so she put that dream away. And I can't wait to share your book with her and say, we're going to get your giant dream out there too. Right.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
So growing up, having small mentality, around me, though there was a giant inside me, and I think we all know what we mean by that. And one of the moments when you talked about me doing the show, I thought about the moment my giant came out, ironically, came in bullying. I was bullied as a young girl. I had this naturally curly hair prior to mousse, living in Texas with the humidity, not a really great thing, right? And so it was, and I had buck teeth so far out, stick so far that I could put my fingers underneath my teeth. I just was not the standard beauty, right, in the world. And I remember, the swan, the story of the swan, the ugly duckling, was just like, oh, if I could only be that could be my story. And yet, I think about the giant that's in all of us that we know we're made for greatness. And one day when I was on the bus, this boy came up to me, and in my mind, it was a switchblade he held to my throat. It was probably a tiny little pocket knife, but he literally held a little knife to my throat, and he said to me, "You're too ugly to live." And talk about small thinking, right? And yeah, I could have allowed that to come into my heart. And I remember going home, and I was crying. I was shaking, but I was crying. And I said to my mom, and I told her what happened. And she was like, "Honey, that was so mean." And, and I said, no, Mom, you don't understand. I'm crying because he doesn't understand that beauty comes from the inside.
Wow.
Yeah. And that when I thought back of my life, I thought that was my first giant moment.
Wow. Holy cow. How did that impact you moving forward?
Yeah. So Diana, I can relate to the curly hair. I like Diana. I get
She's
it, girl.
amazing.
Yeah. So I think what it did from that point on is I learned to stand in who I was, no matter external circumstances. I found my voice that day. And I think that's part of being a giant.
So no matter the circumstances, and I'm sure that served you throughout your life. I mean, did you know that you would be doing what you're doing today when you started out? Was that even an option for you? And was that your pivotal moment? I guess, in the book, there's that point where the giant, he looks up and sees the giants. He's lived this small life, and he has this awakening. And I put in the clock, it's at 5:55, the number of change. And so he looks up and he sees this chance to change. And so that's maybe where I want to go next is, what was your pivotal moment where you had a shift in perspective of there's more in me?
Yeah, I love the illustrations in this book are dreamy. They're mesmerizing. And I love that you just pointed that out at the 5:55, the clock. I didn't realize that. So it's another reason to dive back in and see the book and look even closer. But so I think that beauty from the inside moment was just the beginning. I think that for me, when I think of pinnacle moments, I think we have many of them that we don't give ourselves credit for, by the way. I think, right, a giant becomes a giant 1 inch at a time. And so I think that when I relate to when Rit was outgrowing his house, when he started to become a giant and the walls were falling down. And I think that there's this 2 steps forward, 1 step back dance to becoming a giant and stepping into your giantness because it is uncomfortable and you do outgrow things and sometimes people, and that can be painful in the moment. But I just remember from that point as a little girl, when you said, "Did you see yourself doing?" No, I have a high school education, little bit of college. I never would have thought. I see Ryan going, I always go, me too. We can all do a little me too. But and I love education. I think education is a cornerstone, but education comes in lots of ways. And I've had the privilege, you heard some of the bio, working with some of the top people in the world. And I sometimes people, you go, "Well, how did you get there?" And my thought is, well, of course I'm here. There's a thought of, when we say, "Wherever I step, I belong," if we can really think, wherever I step, I belong, because I really believe that we were all designed from the beginning of time with the purpose in mind. Every single one of us, but it starts with belonging. It starts with having that sense of identity and self-worth and really understanding that giant that's in all of us, that we were meant not just to have a purpose, but to have an abundant life. That is the purpose. So wherever you want to step and you dream about, that's it. Now, in my book, Interrupted, there's a lot of I'm giving the window dressing of the life, adversity, right?
Yes.
For some reason, adversity is what brings out the giant in me, right? It started with the bully. And I think that is true for a lot of people. Adversity is what brings out the giant in us. And so there's a lot of things I did wrong. I mean, failure is the greatest teacher in the world. I love failure because that means I'm trying. And so, we have that opportunity to move forward. But the key for me was each time I faced adversity, I grew. And I like to step into adversity, meaning I mean, one of the greatest adversaries on the planet, if you think about it, is this issue of trafficking.
Yeah.
And it's a radical, crazy story how it was called into it and how it got confirmed. I mean, people tell me when they read the book, I believe in miracles again after reading how this all came to fruition. But I had no idea that the steps I was taking that day were leading me to the greater purpose.
You're confirming like things that I've heard. So there's a part, I just watched one of your videos on vision boards, and what's ironic is my vision boards arrived today. They just came from Canva today.
Awesome.
And so I haven't even unwrapped them yet. But one of the things you said in there is there were times that you had a memory of the future, a memory of something that hadn't occurred yet. But in most cases, you're stepping into that unknown and that uncertainty, but you're willing to step. You're stepping into that adversity. You're stepping into that path without really fully knowing the path. You just trust it.
That's right. Accurate? So, and that comes from my personal faith, because it's so weird that you brought up the word adversity, but not, because when you're in a flow, these kinds of things. I just recorded a video on uncertainty, because when we deal with these young women in trafficking, all of our brains hate uncertainty, by the way, just so you know. That's how your brain was designed. It hates ambiguity, so it writes a story. Our brain always, there's no end of that. We if something's uncertain, we script a story. That's just the way the brain works. So what's really powerful is when we learn that we can script the story in a positive way instead of a catastrophic way. So that really important. Yep. Most people finish the story in a catastrophic way, not because you're wrong or broken or even that you're a small. It's because your brain is trying to protect itself. Right. When there's uncertainty, it's looking for what's going to go wrong. To do,
right?
Exactly.
It's protecting you.
It's protecting you. I love that that's how it was designed. Yet we get to go, oh, this part of our brain right here, our frontal lobe, the part that gives us choice, that makes us different than animals, right? Yeah. We don't have to be afraid all the time. We don't have to have that small thinking. We get to say, oh no, I'm going to script a different story than that. Because what we see is what we create.
Ryan, will you pull up Hugh's comment again?
Yeah.
I want to show just an example of rewriting a story. Crap in our lives. This is a rewriting of a perspective.
I love it, Hugh.
Right? Becomes manure becomes fertilizer, and fertilizer allows me to grow. That's a positive ending to a situation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And funny, Hugh's a soul person to me now, because my mom used to say to me, Kathrine, you are the type of person that could be standing in a field of manure and you would say, there's a pony here somewhere, right? I'd be looking for the pony. No, I'm a realist optimist.
Where's the pony?
Where's the pony? If there's manure, there's got to be a pony. And so, but that's a realist optimist. The realist sees the manure and then says, there's something good here, right? Yeah. Or like you said, there's a purpose. We can do something with this. Taking pain and turning it into purpose.
There is so much. There's so many nuggets, like just in this we're 14 minutes in, and I can't write fast enough. I just see Nick just typing like crazy. People I know at home, their wheels are just spinning. I love what you said about circumstances as well. Like, we've talked about circumstances because everybody's going to have a different set of circumstances and it changes constantly as you step forward and move through life. I heard it one time put that circumstances are rulers of the weak and tools to the wise. And I loved what you said about talking about, like learn to stand in who you are, no matter the circumstances, and then realizing your giant potential. I bought Nick a pair of shoes there's a rock. Back. Oh, you're going to show him?
I love it.
His brother Pride found this rock, and inside of this black rock is a perfect X, a white quartz X, and it's all the way through. And I saw one of the masters of manifesting, and this was Steve Hardison had gone on, and Steve Hardison's a life coach and also the giant. He's He's the giant in the
Oh,
story.
whoa. Yeah, so you
Yeah,
got to see
you
the
see
real
that?
picture. Yeah.
Yes. So Steve
Whoa.
Hardison had
No.
been given a pair of shoes that has his logo on it, and I was like, "You can buy
Killer.
custom Vans," and I was like, you could stand wherever you are. You that's exactly where you're meant to be. That's what Nick had written in a post about his brother, and his brother
Yep.
had given him that rock right there,
Yep.
and told him
Okay.
that was the totem. And that made me think about the circumstances. And if you can learn, no matter what the circumstances, because you could be in some really crappy fields of
No
manure,
question.
and if you can understand your potential and what you're capable of, the power that's in that, just that thought right there, and then flipping it and looking at the possibility thinking of, look, hey, I'm supposed to be right where I'm at, and I can be, do, or have anything I want, and just step.
That's right.
Just start moving.
Yeah.
And
And the
holy
power of
smokes.
movement, that is so powerful. By the way, super cool. I hope you get a kickback from Vans, from all the custom Vans that are getting ready to get ordered.
Yeah,
Because
right.
I'm doing it.
I'm going to
I'm doing it.
receive that. Vans,
Yeah.
if you want to sponsor this, come on in and sponsor
Yeah.
our show. I would love
Hey,
that.
be an
They're the-
affiliate, baby.
Oh,
Absolutely.
they're the coolest. Yeah, right.
I mean, truly, Vans are the coolest shoes. I'm a Texan living in California, so now I'm a Texan, but I'm a native Californian, and Vans are the only right shoes. You got to have your rainbow sandals and your Vans. So, but I loved what you said about, you know, standing in circumstances and even in uncertainty. My personal faith says that God is saying, hey, in uncertainty, insert me, because I am the end of every story. And if God is love and in him, you know, there's no darkness, he's all light, then how much would we want to step into uncertainty as mystery? And then that's adventure, right?
Yeah.
That's the power of it. And when you talk about moving, Ryan, one of our young women, you know, talk about standing in manure. If you ever want to get perspective on your trials in life, come talk to one of our girls that has been trafficked. I mean, it's sex slavery. It's horrific, and it is awful. And yet, in a moment, we can watch a girl show up behind her eyes, because often when they come to us, they've been faking their whole lives, pretending that they're happy about things that they're not. And then when you see them show up behind their eyes, it is one of the most powerful things. And it will happen. I just real quick, I got to tell you guys the story about my daughter loves animals. And when we first moved here to Texas, she missed the ocean, but she embraced the cows, right? And there were these baby calves, these twin baby calves that were born. They were white. And my daughter learned taught them, she'd go, give me a kiss through the fence, and they'd come and bump her nose. And then before normally mamas are super protective, but then the mama started doing it. And then the big bull that all the cowboys were terrified of started to come over, and she would go, give me a kiss, you know, and they would bump her nose. Well, one day, one of the young trafficking girls was there on a retreat, and she said, my daughter came in, you know, little girl, if you think you're not a giant when you're little, listen to this story. And if you think the giant in you can't awake in a moment, keep listening. So here's my daughter, little girl, and she's like, does anybody want to go kiss a cow? Now, you just saw the childlike wonder, right? Because I think that's where our greatness can come out. If we would pay attention to the child in us that thinks everything is possible, that learned to lay there and then walk and everything in between. We were made for momentum. We were made for movement, as Ryan said. So she jumps up, that childlike kicked in. She runs out. She said, how do we do it? My daughter goes, grab some grass. So she skips. This is a girl who was not in her body. Now she's skipping. She grabs the grass. She walks over, and my little daughter is calling out the giant. And she's like, tell it, give me a kiss. And she does. And this cow bumps her, the little baby cat bumps her face like that. And all of a sudden, this girl shows up behind her eyes. That transformation happened in a moment. And it was movement, it was nature, it was adventure. All of those things are giant-like behavior.
Okay, I want to hit on that, because it was spontaneous and instantaneous, that change and that transformation. Good. And so I want to hit on that, because we get so linear in our thinking that if you think about the story, Rick goes home after being taught by a giant. He has giant dreams for the first time in his life. He goes to sleep a small, wakes up a giant, spontaneously, instantaneously, right?
Ooh, good. So good. You are absolutely right. And again, was just recording some videos. We're getting ready to launch an Abundant Life membership group. And I remember one of the lines in your book is, a giant sees abundance in the world. And I just recorded about miracles. And I want you guys to think about this, because what you just talked about, spontaneous and instantaneous, is a miracle. And we've forgotten to believe in miracles. But I want you to think about this for a moment. Apple seed to apple tree. Is it any less of a miracle just because it takes time?
Wow.
Really think about that. Because I've
seen
immediate miracles, and I've also seen miracles that took time. But is it any less of a miracle? Think about a little apple seed to apple tree. Is that not miraculous?
Yeah.
But it took time. So there's inside that seed is the time, long time miracle. You may not see the instantaneous and spontaneous every day, but I promise you it's in there and it's happening.
I love that. We talk about the giant's journey. The book really is the giant's journey. It's that transition from small to giant. What you do when you're a giant is kind of on you, and you go from there and you do more. But getting there, that's the path. And people, I used to run a company called Clear Path Training, and I still have the website up, Clear Path Training. But I had this misconception that I needed a clear path for me to create. And now the clear path is coming out in the form of, here comes my favorite F word, Ryan, fractals. It comes out in this branching and forking and bifurcation and choice and decision, and it branches out like a tree. And so the reality is that our lives don't run linearly in most cases. We go from decision to decision, and it can be branched out, and it doesn't look like a straight line. All we know is that we're a tree. All we know is that that fruit that we're going to bring out already is.
Yes.
And so
that's what I love. What Hugh just said is the seed was already a tree.
Yeah, I actually wrote that down so I could be sure to say it.
Because that right there, the instant that thought came into Nick's head and he started moving forward and stepping into the unknown and recording it and thinking about ways to improve it and grow, he sat on this book for, well, not sat on it, but developed it for 11, 12 years before it became this beautiful physical copy of a book, which, by the way, mine's signed by Richard Paul Evans and Nicholas T. Smith.
Hey, come on. Yeah. I didn't get both.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Now I got to.
Sorry, I have a limited edition.
Face, Ryan.
If you want a limited edition, I don't know. You're going to have to come to Utah and hang out with. What's funny is Richard Paul Evans said, Rick said, I think it's funny that you're having me sign your book. And I've got one from him as well. But
but he wrote the back. Cool. He wrote the back part too. That was because of stepping. That was part of that tree that always was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I was going to say you were fine with your book until you saw Ryan's. And
everyone else like looking at their book and they're like, wow, this won't work.
This is terrible.
Now, I will tell you, I often say comparison is emotional cancer, right? We don't want to compare, but competition, right, is what fuels the greatness or the giant in us, right? Yeah. So I'm all about, hey, now I want one with both signatures.
It only took 2 years, about, I don't know, 10 grand. You know, that's what they see in this.
That's right. Yeah, everybody always sees the end result, right? But they don't see.
That was just the signature.
Yeah. Oh, that was just a signature.
2 years and 10 grand later, I got a signature from Richard Paul Evans.
I love it. I love it. Well, what's fun too, you guys, is when you talk about that, clear path.
Yes.
Things, again, I love neuroscience and neurobiology, and I've worked with some of the top in those fields. And everything is created, often 3 times. First in our mind, that's where it all begins. Second, on paper in some form, think of a house or your book being drawn, and then it takes the final and physical form. And so we as creators, that's why I love the Abundant Life curators. That's what we decided to do with the membership site, because we're curating. So that's creating, it's contending for, and it's protecting, all the things that create that abundant life. And I love the process, and if you can learn to embrace the process of becoming a giant, that is incredible. And then practicing the process.
Mhm.
So embrace it and practice it. And that's where mastery comes.
Okay, I heard something this morning on the word create. It's the etymology, going back to it, is to form something out of nothing. But also the word that was used was to command. And one of the things that I love about physics is that going into a quantum level, a photon only becomes a particle when it's observed a certain way. So when otherwise it's a wave, and it exists in all parts of the universe simultaneously at once in wave form. But the moment it's observed, it becomes a particle, which a particle makes up atoms and everything that we see today, matter. And so what I find interesting in that is it takes that observer for that photon to change from a wave to a particle. An observer. How did an observer, or how did that get created? You know, and I know you have your views on how that came about, but you know, I think there's a scripture that I've heard that says that things are made to be acted on and things to act, right? And the material around us, the matter, the writing on paper, the creating form of nothing, is our ability to take the formless and give it form.
Yeah.
And
okay. Ryan, where's your mind blown emoji? Can you
right?
Can you have me put on the comment?
Hold on.
Get it up there.
I'm gonna nerd out. Yeah.
I mean, truly nerd out. And like you said, I love when we can come together and see things from views. And I'm like, okay, if we're made in the image of the great designer, we can design anything, just like the giant. It's like it's in you. Yeah. It's if you think it, if you do it. There we go. Mind blown emoji over and over. Perfection. I love it, Ryan. So good.
So yeah, the journey is the key. Is that in some cases it's like a tree. It's really slow growing. And in other cases, it's spontaneous. But like you said, the miracle isn't any less miraculous just because it took time.
Yeah.
It's still miraculous to see people shift and change into their giant potential.
Yeah.
You were always the tree, right?
And sometimes we don't see it as it is until later. Okay. So again, neurobiology, when you change your physical body, it takes your brain a period of time. And I don't remember the number. It's somewhere around 30 days-ish. When your body changes, you don't see the physical change. It takes time for us to view it as reality sometimes. And so that's why sticking in, but also having community. When we talk about trees, moving to Texas, I went from palm trees to oak trees, right? Well, oak trees have shallow roots, but they have big community. And so their roots grow together. So when a big wind comes, they stand up because they're connected in their root system. And that's why having reflective community that can say, no, I see you changing, right? Because sometimes we aren't viewing the miraculous change that is spontaneous and instantaneous, but because of just the way that our brain works, we can't catch up to it quick enough in the reality. So we can live it and not realize it.
I've got another nerdy thought here. I want to go down the rabbit hole a little bit. The idea of an observer holding things together, that when we watch something and it holds mass together, when one person is doing that, if that person steps away from that creation, that thing can unravel. But if two people come in and they both observe it, one can step away while the other holds space for it to stay the creation. Now you create a community around that. Now it takes less energy on the original creator because the community holds space for that to stay together. And as that community grows in mass, they hold all of it together. And so it allows us to create the creation and allow it to become what it was capable of becoming. But there's a point where we no longer have to be the observer because what we've created is observed by others and they fuel its growth.
And they own it.
Yeah.
Yes.
They own it too.
Yes.
That's true community. I think of the Pure Hope Foundation. And when this first came, this idea of this ranch, the place of abundant beauty where families could be strengthened so we can stop the issue, but also that these girls can be restored to who they were before they were trafficked. When we think about that, it was too big. And I was small at times. I would shrink, but we're not created to shrink. We're not designed to shrink. I mean,
Yes.
just look at the universe, look at everything. It all expands. So we are too. And so I would resist the shrink, right? And I would just go, no. And there's crazy stories of how those things got confirmed, because when you resist it, even because often we'll give into it, but you can immediately go, oh no, wait, I'm not giving in. I'm not going to resist it. I'm going to grow with it. And then other people join. It's so powerful when you're on mission. People want to be a part. I wanted to be a part of what you were doing. Oh, Rachel just popped up. We need each other to hold our giantness, true community,
So I
Pure
don't
Hope
know.
Foundation.
I don't know if you know this, but Rachel's a business partner of ours. She's a member of the League of Giants, and she's an amazing human. She just did her event on Saturday of last week. And I've known Rachel for about 10 years, just an incredible person. And so we do work together, and she is a part of the community and the tribe and growing this whole thing with us. And so, yeah, it's good to see
I
her.
love that. Good to see you. And talk about a woman who believes in miracles, right? That's what her
Yes,
book is all about. And talk about inspiration. Yeah. Oh, so great.
So as you talk about not being designed to shrink, I think of a popcorn seed. Once it's popped, there's no getting it back in that shell.
That's right. That's good.
It's like Rit in his house. It's not going to work, buddy. You've outgrown it. So you got a decision make. Do you keep growing, or do you go back and try and live a small life as a medium-sized giant?
Yeah. And you know what? Even when we try, we can't. Yeah, that's the best part of growth is, and it's hard if you outgrow people, but I can tell you, your growth will ultimately inspire the right ones, even if they're uncomfortable in the interim. I know this concept well enough to know that sometimes there's grief along the journey to becoming a giant. But that ultimate grief is for the greater good, right? It's for the greatness. And then those people have a space to step into, or they can, stay as small, but you get to have peace either way.
That's a beautiful statement right there. I'm gonna write that. Grief is for greatness. That's a choice. That definition of what grief is for is a choice. I'm sorry. It looks like you're drowning under that comment.
Sorry, that was a little bit longer, but that was important.
I should be up higher on the screen. Okay. No, but I love that. I love that comment though, because I don't know if can you read it? It's okay if I drown underneath.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Ryan, and pull that back up.
It was worth the read. I'll just go up like this.
Community root connection and seeing each other. Always love the thought. You can count the seeds on an apple, but the apples in a seed are infinite.
Yeah, so amazing. Good. So good. Okay, I'm going to go drown behind it. I can only do the squat. That squat's so long. Yeah. But yeah, that's the power, though, of having a giant mentality, as you talk about. Yeah, really, really incredible. Once you've been stretched, there's no return to that previous space, Lamar. You're right. Yeah, but that's the gift. Even though it might be painful in the moment, right? Like Red in his bed and the walls are breaking out. I love that visual.
Or like you said, where sometimes you can't see that happening or that change that's occurring. I love our tribe of giants because there's people at all different levels of their giant journey. And it's that I love what you talked about with the oak trees is, look, we've got a community of different sizes of trees all around each other, thousands of them, supporting and holding up the ones that might not see it in themselves quite yet, the wind starts to blow a little and they start to tip just a little bit, and then those bigger giants hold on to their roots for them until they can get bigger and expand and grow. So
yeah, the greatness connection is so powerful.
I want to dive into that now. So we're going to go down another rabbit hole. This is another branch of our tree called the interview with Kathrine Lee. The idea that the community can hold space, right, for maybe a tree that's a little weaker. As leaders in this program and this group, we have down days, and there are times where that community keeps going even if I have a down day, which is beautiful. And so I'd imagine, Kathrine, that you've never had a down day.
Oh, not once. I call that the good battle days, right? There's we all contend for something in our life, and so those days are when you take on good battle, and it's really important to know, don't fake it during that time. meaning you acknowledge it. The brain needs acknowledgement. It's empathy for yourself to say, well, that really stinks. And then though that reality allows you to rise up to combat it. So I like to say on those days, authenticity is our greatest commodity, right? To be able to acknowledge it and then move forward. It's the pony, right, is somewhere in the middle of the manure. There's a pony here somewhere. And so that authenticity is our greatest commodity, both to acknowledge for ourselves and move forward, both to tell people I'm having a rough day, because then when you have a rough day, it's like, oh, I can reach out because they reached out to me, and that's how we get to be a stronger community.
You talked about, sorry, Nick.
Yep. Go.
I was just going to say real quick. I was just going to say, like you talked about, seeing things differently. You're standing in that field of manure. Some people might refer to it as reframing. So you're gonna acknowledge that the thing that's happening, let it flow through. Sometimes you got to sit with it for a minute. Sometimes it takes a day or two, or sometimes. But the faster you can re-engage and reframe that you talked about recreating your story. Or rewriting your story, or creating whatever story you want from that moment on, you can do that. And the faster you do that, the faster you can grow and step into that. And so if you have something that you don't like that happened in your space, feel it, reframe it, and move forward.
That's right. Hey, can I geek out for a minute?
Yes.
Okay, so we have this incredible part of our brain called the Reticulator activating system. Maybe you guys have talked about that in the past. Right?
Yeah, the old. I've never heard of that.
Barely. The old RAS.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly what I said.
So what's so powerful is you tell your brain what to see. Dr. Hyman, who we talked about on the intro with that Daniel Plan project, he talks about we program what we see. And so if we will say every morning, I'm going to see something beautiful today, all day long, that reticulator activating system, you just programmed it, and it's going to look, remember the uncertainty, it wants to finish the story. Yes. Our brain wants to fill that story in. So the brain is scanning all day long to see something beautiful. And we all know this.
Cars, like if you're buying a car and you find the one car you want, and you just obsess over it. And then you start seeing that car everywhere you are. And you're like, what the heck? Everyone else has that car. Like you start noticing because of the old RAS.
That's right.
Like to call it.
That's right.
There's a space between between your eyes where there is no vision here. Yeah. It's blocked. But the brain fills it in. It doesn't like those gaps. You hear something and you fill in the story. You see something or taste it or touch it, then there's always a story. There's always this meaning making of whatever's going on. But the thing is neutral. The reality is that thing has no meaning. It's just an event.
And when we make up the negative stories, I joke around. Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but women, I'm talking to you right now. Men, you might learn something about women. Somebody might look at us funny and we immediately make up the story. Like she hates me. She's judging me. She, whatever. There's these stories that women compete. And one of our pillars.
I think I'm part woman then.
Are you part woman? Yeah. Okay, I just don't know what you experience in your
what percentage, Nick, what percentage?
We want to know.
Based on that description, 99.9%.
And so what's so crazy is when we're in that position, right? I always teach, ask instead of assume, ask instead of accuse. Like, would we just stop scripting the negative stories and ask the question? You'll probably find out she had gas, right? Like, come on, she's just making a face because she doesn't feel good. Yeah. Whatever it is, we make up so many negative stories. And one of our pillars in Pure Hope Foundation is to raise up the heroes' hearts of men and to unite the voices of women again, that will stop comparing and competing and will start completing the work that only the united voices of women can do. And then when we pair that with the heroes, bring you guys into the picture, it is just such an incredible, we can literally change the world. I have the audacity to believe that in our generation, especially with the younger generation, if there's anybody 30 and under on, you guys know about possibility like no other generation. And I believe that we will eradicate this issue of trafficking, which is right now the number 2 criminal industry in the United States. Wow. But I believe with the possibility thinking of the younger and the wisdom and the money of the olders, that we could eradicate this issue in our generation because we're finally talking about it.
That declaration you made was at 10:10 a.m. here in Utah.
Oh,
And I love synchronicity. And all day yesterday, I had 10:10 throughout my life. It was on my clock, so I work and I have a sales number that I have to hit. And right now it's at 10.10%, which is way above where it should be or could be, which is awesome. But it's a 10:10. And so when you make a declaration like that, I think there's synchronicity that pops up and shows you, yeah, that's the path. That's the one you want to be on. Right.
Agreed. Agreed. I like it. I'll take it.
I love it.
Male warriors, male heroes, Diana said. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Love that.
I love it. You know, we have a phenomenal tribe and a community of active people who are actively out there on the journey at different levels. And I think they get concerned of, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah. So if you're doing it, you're good. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
But truly, it's mediocrity that kills us. As we know, it's the small, right? It's the small thinking. But it's also apathy, meaning I'm doing nothing. I see a lot of people paralyzed because they don't want to do something wrong. And that paralysis leads to, to procrastination or vice versa. And the truth of the matter is momentum. Ryan, you mentioned that earlier, the movement piece. Momentum breeds momentum. We all know that. It's just science. And the truth is for all of us if you're doing it, you're doing it right, because you're going to learn if it doesn't go perfect. And the learning is actually how mastery happens. Failure is how mastery happens. You talk to anybody. I mean, having the platform of the Oprah Show a few times, it wasn't just being on the show that was so powerful. It was being around such high capacity people, every single one of her staff, right? She, of course, greatness, she attracts greatness. They were all phenomenal, but they're also all very present in the moment, as busy as they are. So just quick, can I share a quick Oprah story real quick?
Yeah, please.
I don't share this often, but I think when we talk about, are we doing it right? Being present in the moment is doing it right. And I don't know that there's anybody kind of greater than somebody who broke out of small and into giant than Oprah. So we were at her, I'm trying to think if I think it was the second time I was on her show. At the time, President Obama was the president and he was getting ready to come on. And so we were the second show, he was the third. And they literally, you can probably see the picture. Well, you may not be able to. The second one, she was gathering groups of us to take pictures together because it was the final season. So I guess it was the third time I had the privilege of being a part of the show. And they were like, Oprah, we've got to get going. We've got to move. The president's here. They're starting to walk the dogs through, right? The bomb dogs, whoever they are, Secret Service, FBI, we're all scanning around, just making sure everything was safe. And Oprah was like, everyone here is so important. And I'm not going to get the whole audience because she invited some of us back to the final week of shows to be a part of when she was closing that year. And she said, I'm going to have very small groups so we can all be seen in the picture. And so she was so present, even though she had a big presence waiting, she was so present with all of us that were there, and everybody's presence was important to her. And that's just the way she operates. And so if you're doing something, be present, honor the people around you's presence, and you'll be amazed at where you'll go.
Wow. Man, I just went blank on what I was even going to ask, because that's phenomenal. I mean, you talk about high capacity people. This is kind of where I want to venture off a little bit, is that when giants take steps, they're still taking small steps, but their capacity is such that it feels giant to those that are smaller. Yeah. And so when you hang around high capacity people, they're still working within what they can handle, but their capacity is such that their steps are huge in comparison to somebody that's just beginning the journey. And so what I love about that is that you get around an Oprah. She was once a small, and she broke out of it, and she developed her capacity to such a degree that she could take giant steps and meet with giant people. But at one point, she didn't have the capacity for that. She had to grow into that capacity.
And she was told, just like, Rit's family, said smalls will always be small.
No.
She was told she should change her name. She was told she shouldn't be on air, that she wasn't meant to be. I mean, the very things that she's the greatest at. Oprah's her brand, right? Her name is her brand. She was told she should throw out. She was told she shouldn't be on TV. Hello. So, but I love what you talked about, the big steps, because one of my favorite moments in the book, and I'm trying to find where I wrote it down, was when where they first met, Remy and Red, and so Remy starts to walk away from him, and he's taking these huge steps, and Red's like, "Wait, but Remy just keeps being a giant. He keeps moving, and when he catches up, he says." And I wanted to write down exactly what he said. It's, that's a very giant thing to do, because he didn't give up. He did finally catch up. And he said that was commitment. That's a very giant thing to do. It just it still gets my heart to think of that. So good.
There's emotion behind this, right? This whole thing. These are lessons I learned from my mentors. These are things that they said to me. And so I wanted to share that in a format that my kids would understand it. And one of the words that they struggled with, that the beta readers struggled with, was commitment. And so I had to rewrite that in a way that it would make sense, that commitment is what you do when you commit something. This is from Steve Chandler. If you're not doing something, you are not committed, because the word commit means to do. And so in that story where he follows the giant and he says, "I couldn't keep up. You were way ahead of me. I'm just a small. Don't you realize I'm a small?" And he says, "Yeah, but you did." That's a very giant thing to do. That's commitment, is doing it even if it's hard, doing it even if you don't know the path, doing it regardless of what's going on at home. If people are telling you can't do it. Commitment is getting out there.
Well, and I just wonder, for each of us, at least I'll admit it, I don't know if either one of you can relate to this. There are areas of my life, I'm a giant. I'm taking giant steps all the time. But there are areas where I'm the small and I'm going, "Don't leave me behind. Wait, you're running ahead of me," right? There are areas that I really feel that even today, where it's like, I mean, we just, our donors are amazing. And we just purchased this ranch. It was 7 years of waiting in faith that it could happen. And what did we do when we didn't know what to do? We were committed to the mission. So we opened a home, but not on the original vision of the big acreage. So we started. So what do you do when you don't know what to do? You do what you do know to do. And so that's what I was doing. But then the land of the giants, right? This massive ranch with so much to take care of, and then expanding and more staff and more girls coming, which, means more trauma, but it also means more transformation. And so instead of looking at the trauma, that's a small thinking, I go, no, I need to look at the stories of transformation that's already happened and what's promised that we know we can bring. But had we not done, the first steps of chasing after the giant dream, we wouldn't have ever had the stories of transformation to then expand into.
Okay, so our company is called Mandelbrot LLC, after the mathematician. And so Benoit Mandelbrot created an equation that was super simple, but when repeated creates complexity. And so I want to throw this up, because what you said is that when you don't know what to do, you go back to the small steps and you repeat those. And out of that comes complexity and beauty and creation. And so when you don't know what to do, go back to what you do know. Go back to the fundamentals. Go back to the foundation. And then it opens up the path. It's amazing what happens, because it opens up that fractaled path, and now it flows again. Yeah.
And it's the same things. You talked about the fundamentals. Nicole, I love it. Same girl. The fundamentals are the fundamentals, right? The truth is the truth. The way is the way. Like that just is. It just is. And so if we will just continue, I just this morning was thinking about the word remember. Remember, like we again, our brains want to create, they want to grow. I mean, again, look at a child who will crawl. They're not holding back. They'll fall down, they'll bump their heads. You referred to your kids, Nick, right? You're more worried about them becoming a giant than they are, because they naturally, right? We naturally move in that. And so if we will remember that we used to not be able to walk. If we will remember our greatness, that, I mean, even just the miracle that you are in the mirror every morning, the way your eyes see, the way your heart beats, the way your legs move. We don't think about those things because greatness is already wired into us. And so remember, right? So go back to the fundamentals, but remember what giant steps you've already taken, but they started as smalls. They started as small steps.
I want to throw this up. Not vomit it up. That's different. but the word remember, to reattach, in a way, that's what it means. To reattach, to attach it to who you are. And you mentioned having a memory, remembering an event that hadn't happened. That was you being on the Oprah show.
Yeah.
And you had a memory of that as though it had already happened, yet it hadn't happened. Yeah. And when it did occur, when it caught up to time in your space, it was exactly like you remembered it.
Yeah.
And so I want to speak to that a little bit. We're going to run out of time, but if you're good going over, we are.
I'm enjoying this. So
if it were like, are we done yet? Can we?
I like how in that description too, you had seen that vision, or the memory or the dream, and it came to you clearly. You were like, oh, that feels like celebrity-ish, and I don't want the spotlight, but I want the influence. I want what comes from that to be able to help other people. So you held on to that part, and then you kind of just threw it away and said, okay, I'm turning it over, and I'll do everything I can do on my end, but I'm trusting you, God, that you will allow this to happen. If you're giving this to me, if this is what you're showing me, and this is what I'm supposed to do, or what I'm destined to do in my greatness, I'm giving it back, and I'm going. Here we go.
What's so cool was the setup. Thank you. I love, number one, you guys obviously are great listeners. The fact that I mean, I get that you paid attention.
Can you tell my wife and my family, my boss at work?
Yeah. I get it. But what I love is the fact that you're reflecting back to me. And I go, yeah, I'm remembering, right? I'm reattaching to that connection. And what's so cool is, for those that haven't seen that in context, what I was referring to is, I mean, our brains are made to make goals, right? To have dreams and intentions. Yeah. But sometimes we are given a vision. There's something that, for me, it looked like a movie playing in my mind. In other words, it looked like a memory. It was that vivid, but I knew it hadn't happened yet. And at that big of a thing has only happened twice. It happened about being on Oprah. And what's interesting, please note, the first time I was on, it didn't look anything like the vision. It was not she and I sitting alone on a stage. Bob Greene was on. And so I was standing for part of it. It didn't look anything like the vision. And people were like, how was it? And I'm like, it was great. And in the back of my head, I was like, but I'll be back on, because it wasn't fully the fruition of the vision. So, and I had no control over if she would ask me back, right? You don't control that. And it was a few years in between the second ask that then it was the vision. And interestingly enough, she had sent me a book and asked me to read it and asked my opinion on it. And all the talk with her producers was all about that book. So when they flew me there to do the show the second time, I thought it was going to be the author and she and I, and I'm like, well, that's not it either. So I get there and we're getting ready. We're going to go on. They were airing live and they were filming and airing live. Normally she films live and then they edit, but they don't air live, but we were airing live. So we had to do a walkthrough the night before. And they said, okay, so then you and Oprah, and then you and Oprah will sit down, and then you and Oprah will talk. And I'm like, well, what about, the author? And they're like, what are you talking about? They hadn't even remembered that is what they were like. No, Oprah just wants to talk with you. And I was like, here it is. This is the moment. This is the vision coming to fruition. But what's so cool about that is when we started Pure Hope Foundation, I believe that vision with the Oprah thing and that coming to fruition happened so that when I was called to do this work with Pure Hope Foundation, which is super big and super scary, but it's also scary, makes it really exciting, right? To take on good battle. And so here we are. And I'm like, oh, if that happened, this can happen, because this is so much more. I mean, being on Oprah was great, but this is so much more noble. This is what humanity is about, helping each other. So I know this will come to fruition. But when it didn't happen immediately, just like the Oprah, we started, right? the first show wasn't the vision coming to fruition. We started the first home, but not on the ranch because we hadn't raised the funds yet for the ranch. Yeah. And it was 7 years in between. We just got the ranch and now we're able to expand. So that vision now is coming to fruition.
Let me show you a vision. I don't know if we can see this without my screen falling over, but I've got this. Let's see if I can get it up here at least enough.
Yes.
We made a movie poster and
with
just
Pixar and Disney.
And said, yep, that it's that it's gonna come out on February 22nd. 2022 is what we put on there, that we would start moving in that direction. And it's not, again, like what you said, it's not about the movie, and it's not about the influence that, or the celebrity or the fame or any of that. It's putting it out there so that we can expand and grow and have the influence to be able to help other people and to see their giant potential and to do more and more good in the world. That's the goal of it.
Okay, you guys, mind blown emoji.
Oh, you want me to do that again?
I want them because
I'm good at that.
Because the book is so well written. I saw it as a movie as I was reading it. It didn't feel like I was reading a book, and I actually was going to say that at the beginning of the talk. So I feel like I want to cry, like I have a lump in my throat, because as I was reading it, I could hear the footsteps. It's so well done that as I read it, it felt like I was watching a movie. And I never even thought to say, make it a movie. There's the mind blown, but it's exactly what is meant for this story. And I'm holding that space for you, just like you guys are for me, right? That will happen. And I happen to have a few connections. This is what I love about the community of people that are in realms that I might be able to make a connection there, and to be just one root that ties the story right to the whole community. So I would love to connect.
This is what you hit on. This is what we're we are creating it. We're growing into this. Of that vision already is the red carpet, the being in there and watching that premiere of that movie. I even had a meditation created from one of our tribe members from Australia who is phenomenal. She created a meditation just purely around the book and the movie and that creation. And so at night I'll listen to that before I go to bed. I haven't been consistent, but it's enough that I know it already is. And stepping and creating from that space of it already is allows it to be.
Yeah.
But when we think, I don't know if I can do that, so we quit. Well, the movement is the key. The energy, you might not feel top of your game every day. There's days I don't feel like I can do it, but I keep moving forward. Even on those days, I set my intentions and I keep moving toward that dream, even on the days where I have a good battle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I don't know if you saw I think it was Lori just before, she said, I saw it as a movie as I read it too. And thank you, Rachel. Rachel said, I'm a miracle worker. And I really believe, as being an instrument in the hands of the one that is the author of all miracles, again, that's my heart. My faith is, what a privilege that we get, right? To be able to take whole of how we're wired, the dreams and intentions and the goals and our gifts and our talents, and let that be animated into this greatness and grow into the giant. And always, this is what I know for sure. Oprah always says, what do I know for sure? She always closed her magazine with that type of statement. What I know for sure is your giantness, right? Your greatness will always help other people. Now you can become a giant that stomps on people and hurts people, but you'll have no fulfillment. You'll have no greatness. I could think of people right now that, that their memory's getting stomped out. It's not legacy, but if you become a giant, I just want to say this to everyone listening that has small mentality or thinks, that they're being selfish or they're being in Australia. I've had the privilege of touring around the world. In Australia, they call it the tall poppy syndrome. They have a real mentality because the colony there of Australia was originally where they would take the people that had been in prison and they would drop them there. So it was a colony of people that were really put pressed down in their lives anyway. And they have this mentality of, how dare I raise up a tall poppy and look down on other people? And they have to overcome that mentality in order to grow. And what I want to say is, your greatness will absolutely bless other people. It will not be a selfish endeavor. It will be an opportunity to make this world a greater, better place. And so grow into that giant, because people, I mean, I just think of the relationship between the two characters. Without the giant, the small couldn't have become a giant, because he had to see him. He had to look to him to know what it looked like, sound like, felt like to
Stand
be a
on
giant.
the shoulder, right?
Oh, that was one of my favorite. I have that written down too. Look at my notes from the book that I took. When he puts him on his shoulders and he sees that greater view for the first time, I literally, look at this. I literally sobbed, because I think that's what we do with our Pure Hope Foundation girls every day. I love that perfect visual. He's standing and all of a sudden he can see what's possible. And I want to be that for my children. I want to be that for the girls at the Hope Home. I want to be that for other people, every person listening. I feel like I've accomplished what I've accomplished. And when I say I say that very loosely, because it took God and a whole community of people, but it was also my willingness to step into it. We have to say yes in order to become a giant. And so we get that choice. That's one of the greatest gifts. But I believe I did that so that people could look at me and go, if she did it, I can do it too.
Yeah, man.
There was a point in our in what we were doing where our growth was slowed or stopped.
Almost always.
And Nick and I we had some talks and some conversations and started looking at ourselves and saying, okay, well, where's the blocks? What's happening? Where are we like, what did we forget? What are we doing? And it came through so clearly in from some other people and we had to learn from other giants. Okay,
right.
Well, stop making it about yourselves. And when you look back at what was growing and what was working the most, it was when you were serving and giving and helping other people to grow, and then allowing them just to grow into their greatness and to help them see their giant potential. And as we started to serve the tribe again and build that community, it went gangbusters. It just took off. And that's our whole purpose is as we realize, is service and giving back and helping other people on their giant journey. And then also looking forward and inviting other giants to come onto our show so that we can learn from them as well, because I don't know if you know this about you, but you're a giant, and we get to, right now we're having the opportunity to stand on your shoulders and to see things from a different perspective and learn and grow. And then we shift and go, yep, okay, we can do that. If she can do that, we can do that. So
Ryan,
I'm absolutely loving this right now.
Okay, so quotable, summarizing what you just said, because that was so powerful. Generosity makes giants. Right? It's the generosity. Another thing that I love that Remy said, it really seriously makes me want to cry. So Rick goes and Remy says, I'm honored to share my story with you. He didn't say, I'm going to give you the 10 steps to becoming a giant. I mean, that is so profound. What he said, oh, stop it, Nick, you're going to make me cry. But he said, I'm honored to share my story with you. That's the remember I was talking about earlier. I've been there. I get it. I had one of the girls yesterday that is in her journey of healing and transformation right now. And she said, how did you know? And I thought back to your book and I thought, I'm honored to share my story with you.
Huh.
Whew. It's good.
Now you got me crying.
That's a good thing.
I don't see it as coincidence that our paths crossed. We weren't working with Rachel when we started. We stepped into the unknown and kept moving forward night after night. We would meet at a Beans and Brew because it was quiet and that they had Wi-Fi. and it was close to our work. So Nick and I worked at different places, and for a while there we worked at the same place. But then we would meet at this Beans and Brew, and we'd start talking, and we'd start creating, and then put it into action night after night after night. And then Rachel Smart pops back into our world. Nick had coached her years ago, and boom, comes into our space again, and boom, we out of necessity, we created the Tribe of Giants, and boom, all of these other giants that have been commenting this whole time start coming into the space. And I don't think it's a coincidence at all that you came into our space. A few weeks ago, we started to talk about creating programs around phones and phone safety for kids, and the things that are happening there in before they become caught up into sex trafficking, and things like that, because it is a very real thing. Two of our league members, myself and another Alyssa, she's very public, had experiences with this in our own homes with phones and teenagers and kids. And I definitely don't find this as a coincidence that this is what you do in your space, and can help us and advise us in some of the things that we're doing to help other people, because that's what we do as giants. We're constantly growing and adapting and helping others to see their giant potential, and also keep them as safe as possible for those that prey on others.
That's right. And you know what I love is I think, oh, I've got some giants for you to help with that, which are the girls that it happened to, right? For them to share their stories, for them to say, you know, what would keep me safe when I really look at my journey and where it went wrong. That's where I feel like I get this privilege of, somebody said to me one time, Kathrine, I see you in the middle of a stage and there's millions of people watching, right? And with the Oprah show, that was a reality several times, but she was projecting after that. And she said, but here's what's so cool, because she knows my heart. She said, no one sees you because you've raised up so many other voices. So you're in the middle orchestrating the voices, and people are looking at other people, hearing other people, because you're there in the middle of the stage orchestrating. And so those voices raising that's the influence, Ryan, that you referred to earlier. I don't want to be famous. I have some famous friends. It's awful, but and I'm an introvert by nature. And so, you know, I want my cocoon and all of those things. And yet I do have a voice and I have influence that has been given, but the greatest influence is raising up other people's voices. And that's where that generosity is what makes giants. And it ties back to community. So I can't wait to see what comes of this. You know, Rachel is truly someone who believes in miracles. Her whole book is about it, as we've said. And she's seen real tangible miracles, physical and otherwise, in her life and her family. And when we connect like this, miracles happen. And I'm so honored to have been a part of it. Truly. It's just the beginning, right?
This is just the beginning. Yep, we really are. We're over on time. We'll probably wrap up here, but we want to support you. So how do people find you? And then before we wrap up fully, what piece of wisdom would you want to share that maybe didn't get shared, or something that you want to bring up that maybe needs to come across?
Final thoughts.
I love that. So first of all, KathrineLee.com. The hardest thing for me is my name is spelled differently. So be sure you spell it with the KHHRINE, not ERINE. There you go, KathrineLee.com. Okay. And PureHopeFoundation.com, which I've seen I'm scrolling, which I love. So those are the two best places. So, you know, I love that you use the word wisdom, because you know, that to me is the greatest gift that I could carry and give to others. And so it's a daily request of me in my personal quiet time, is to have wisdom that would bring hope and then equip people to live the life they were designed to live. And that life is abundant. It's abundant life. And so I think that my word of wisdom after talking to you guys today and even hearing your stories is that we all need to know, not just believe, but know that our story is giant, no matter what it is. If it's a story of tragedy or triumph or fame or obscurity, every one of our stories is a giant story. And it's just a question if we want to grow into it, step into it, and who is supposed to hear it. And so I hope that everyone will on this, that I will raise up your voice, that today you'll remember your greatness, you'll remember you're a miracle, and you'll tell somebody your story.
Awesome. Ryan, do you have any final thoughts?
Man, I could go back. I've got pages and pages and pages of notes here. The old RAS is going nuts. One thing I liked too, and it helps me, you had said, live like, I wrote it down a little different. You had talked about your name, and I said, live like your name is your brand.
Yeah.
Oprah does that.
With Oprah. That's right.
And you don't have to be pompous or arrogant in that statement, but live like your name is your brand, and get out there and understand your greatness. That's really understanding your greatness. She knows who she is and exactly what she's capable of becoming, and she has goals. You don't think that Oprah doesn't have goals and dreams and new aspirations from here. You can look back and say, man, she's hit the pinnacle. She's probably looking and going, just the same as you talk about having, hard days or hard moments or whatever, she's human. She has those too, but she hits pinnacles and then looks back and goes, reset, new goal.
Yeah.
Who else can I help?
Yeah. And I love that she has Gail. She has that best friend, and then she's got that tribe and that community, that oak trees, right, that holds on. And it's interesting, Ryan, that you said that. I just want to make this point as we close. I actually fought my name being my brand up until last year. KathrineLee.com actually just launched last year because I didn't want it to be about me. And then I realized, and really your book, Dick, I just want to say, when it says, I'm honored to share my story with you, that is when it turned for me to say, KathrineLee.com, I can do that because it's a place for me to share my story. Everything I teach is story-based. So yeah. I'm just sharing my story, the pieces of my life that have been beneficial. And so it's so fascinating because it took me a while to grasp that my story could be my brand. So Ryan, I love that you actually summarized Oprah's story and things I had to say in our discussion into that sentence, because that's the gift we have to give others, is our life, our story. So that is our brand. Love it.
Well, we appreciate you being on. I mean, this has been phenomenal, and I know it's just the beginning of our relationship, but I want to speak to those that are watching. This is for you. So as you watch this, just know that you are already a giant. And so it's not something to become, it already is. Yeah. And so stepping into that uncertainty, that's the path. And so when you share your story, when you speak it and step into it, even not knowing that uncertainty, that's where your growth will occur. And so step into that fearlessly, courageously. You might not be fearless. Let me change that. You might be scared, but that's where the courage comes in. And so do it anyway, because that is where your growth will occur. And so we love you. We appreciate you being on our show. Make it a giant day, getting emotional, and we will see you on the next video. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for the honor.